So a web server is a server. Great, that's all I needed to know. I guess I'm done with this video. Just kidding. It's server software or hardware. Usually when people look at pictures like this, they think of that as a server, and that's where their mind stops. A big part of this video will be for us to understand more about the software part of a web server. Whether that's Wikipedia's intention here is irrelevant. But I like that they say it's hardware that's dedicated to running said software. And what is that software doing? It can satisfy World Wide Web client requests. So that's pretty simple and straightforward. And if you notice my picture over here of an Apache motorcycle, not the Apache software, of a very popular web server software, but maybe when you see a motorcycle around town, the next time you can start thinking about a server just being software. So let's ask this for our first question. What is the point of this server software? And like it is highlighted right here, the point is for it to satisfy World Wide Web requests, and therefore it's a web server. If it's another type of server, then its point would be to satisfy those type of requests, whatever type of server it is. So if it's an FTP server, it would be looking to satisfy FTP client requests. But if you have a server, you must have a client. That's kind of how that relationship works. Before we go deep into the article though, let's go ahead and read the caption for this cool picture. It says it's the inside and front of a Dell PowerEdge. And obviously because of its shape, it is designed for rack mounting. So I challenge you to go look up a Dell PowerEdge on Amazon.com and check out the price for one. But we're going to continue reading over here. It says a web server processes incoming network requests over HTTP and several other related protocols. So reading that makes me ask, what type of protocols are related to the World Wide Web? HTTP is the simple one, but we can have some more here. And I don't know if you noticed, but I skipped this sentence, and it's actually pretty valuable, so let me go back. It says a web server can, in general, contain one or more websites. So if I asked you how many websites exist on a server, you can actually answer that quite a few ways. Maybe you'd say exactly what it says in Wikipedia here. It's a one or more website. Maybe you answer it by finding out what the world record for the number of websites on one single server what that record is, because maybe it can be hundreds. I just have no idea. I imagine the home lab people might have tested the limits of that. But let's focus here. The primary function of a web server is to store, process, and deliver web pages to clients, and the communication between client and server takes place using the Hypertext Transfer Protocol. Pages delivered are most frequently HTML documents, which may include images, style sheets, and scripts, in addition to the text content. And so you would usually see .doc or .html, or looks like right here we have multiple web servers, which may be used for a high traffic website. Here, Dell servers are installed together, being used for the Wikimedia Foundation. And that's a lot of servers right there. Now, a user agent, commonly a web browser or web crawler, initiates communication by making a request for a specific resource using HTTP. And the server responds with the content of that resource or an error message if unable to do so. The resource is typically a real file on a server's secondary storage, but this is not necessarily the case and depends on how the web server is implemented. So I had to scroll back up because I wanted to ask, what is a user agent? And then what is the resource? And it says right here, the resource is typically a real file on the server's secondary storage. That was kind of mind-blowing the day I realized that's how it works. But pay attention to this part right here where they say it's not necessarily the case and it depends on how the web server is implemented. Now, while the primary function is to serve content, a full implementation of HTTP also includes ways of receiving content from clients. This feature is used for submitting web forms, including uploading of files. So here's my question. In a full implementation of HTTP, what can a client do? And the client can submit web forms, including uploading of files. So that can be a risky thing for a website to allow. Now, many generic web servers also support server-side scripting using active server pages, PHP, or other scripting languages. So I ask, when can web servers allow server-side scripting? And the answer would be something like when the server is supporting active server pages, aka ASP, or using PHP. Why it's not HPP is beyond me. But when you're using these languages, the behavior of the web server can be determined in this separate file and thus be executed on the server without, they're saying here, affecting the software already being executed, which is the server software itself. Usually this function is used to generate HTML documents dynamically as opposed to returning static documents, and then the former is primarily used for retrieving or modifying information from databases. The latter is typically much faster and more easily cached, but cannot deliver dynamic content. Now, web servers can frequently be found embedded in devices such as printers, routers, and webcams. The web server may then be used as part of a system for monitoring or administering the device in question. And this usually means that no additional software has to be installed on the client computer, since only a web browser is required. And I'm thinking the web browser is like the #1 piece of software that is being utilized on the planet because it is included in most operating systems and people are using it for everything nowadays. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and skip the history, and I want to finish this particular video with the path translation, so this will just be like part 1. We can go into the other parts later, but here we go. Web servers are able to map the path component of a uniform resource locator, you've heard of this before, URL, into a local file system resource. So if I was you, I'd just key in on that word, map the path to a local file system. But also web servers are able to map the path of an internal or external program name for dynamic requests. So let's look at static requests. The URL path specified by the client is relative to the web server's root directory. So consider the following URL as it would be requested by a client over HTTP. So here's our example.com /path/file.html. At first I thought that was a header file in C or C++, but no. There we go. Let's widen this one for the rest of the video. Now the client's user agent will translate it into a connection to this site, right? And it does that with the following HTTP. Here we are on the host, on the server, and you're going to get what's in this path. So you're going to go to this folder, and then you're going to go to this file in that folder and bring that back. The web server will now append the given path to the path of its root directory. So on an Apache server, this is commonly home /www, which makes sense. But on Unix machines, it looks a little stranger with /var. Nonetheless, the point is, here's a root directory, and here is the particular folder and then file being requested. Look at us up here. So we're on wikipedia.org. We must be in a folder called wiki, and we're looking at a file called web_server. Now the hashtag will come later here, but let's finish the video with this last paragraph. The web server then reads the file if it exists and sends a response to the client's web browser. And the response will describe the content of the file and contain the file itself, or an error message will return, and we've all probably seen those. So I think this is a good last question for us in the video. What is sent along with the file itself? And I want you to pay particular attention to this, especially if you're interested in network security. But what's being sent is actually a description of the content of the file as well as the file itself.